Release of a new game console is always an event, and not only the moment of release but also the exciting anticipation of the next novelty, especially when a lot of interesting information about it begins to leak. And if often these are just controllable leaks to assess the audience's reaction, then the leaks, after which internal investigations and even court proceedings begin, clearly testify to the opposite. And just such a situation recently happened with Sony, when a lot of exciting things were leaked about PS5 Pro, and given that the company is already looking for culprits in this video, it promises to be interesting. After all, today I collected in one video everything that is known about the upcoming console, and although Sony itself has not yet officially announced it, there is no doubt that it will come out. So sit back, prepare likes under the video and enjoy watching. Let's start with the fact that the Pro version of the previous generation of PlayStation 4 was released in 2016, 3 years after the release of the Fat version. This suggests that the Pro version of PS5 should have been released last year, but it is worth waiting for. At the same time, as you understand, all this is unofficial. Sony has not yet stated anything, and what we will discuss next has become known from various leaks. But the joke is that only a couple of days after this information leaked to the internet, Sony stated that it was starting an internal investigation into the leaks, indirectly confirming the authenticity of all or partially leaked information. By the way, a lot of exciting things have become known. Firstly, about the content of the console. The processor has practically not undergone any changes compared to the 3-year-old console. This is the same AMD Zen 2, only now with 5 nanometers of a processor, which probably allowed to accelerate it to 0.3 GHz without increasing the thermal package of the device. Although considering the original radiator that Sony stuffed in the first revisions and then slowly reduced, the original cooling, I think, here would be enough for more acceleration. However, the number of cores and threads remains unchanged, with the same 8 cores with 16 threads. So far, it does not look like an improved Pro version because all other changes to the hardware were made only by the video core. Now the OPU will have a new architecture with RDA for 3, in which 60 computing blocks versus 36 in the old version. Of course, this does not mean that we will see the same 3-fold increase in performance in games. It does not work that way. Of course, it is indicated that the tracing will be better, but the upgrade of the video core is needed a little for another. Do not forget that the rest of the hardware has not been changed. Even the amount of memory remained at the same level of 16 GB, which in modern realities is relatively small, given that this number is divided between the video core and the function of the usual ASU. The memory is a bit disorganized, but 16 GB is still not enough. Some famous experts, such as from Digital Foundry, express concerns that the same GTA 6, even on the Pro version, due to such a limitation in memory, may not go to 60 frames. Computers have not been running games for long and use scaling technologies for all sorts of improvements, such as DLSS in NVIDIA or FSROMD. In simple words, when we take a picture in full HD resolution and stretch it, for example, to 4K, and the missing frames, so that it does not look like a pixel mess, we finish with MEV-scaled technologies. As a result, we get a high resolution with less load on the hardware because full HD loads less than a real native 4K. And so we get more resolution and frames, which are all the benefits. That's why a new video card is needed. Moreover, if earlier, when only the technologies of scale appeared, they looked and worked not very well, then now everything has changed, and now without such a function, not a single video card on the PC costs. Surprisingly, this was not the case on the consoles of the release itself. This is the main feature of the Pro version, which may not surprise on paper. However, if you look at the identical functionality of the stationary video cards, you can increase the number of frames by almost half when you turn on the upscale. And as other insiders who already work in game studios were given builds, etc. What do you do with the game to get an "It is improved for PS5 Pro" badge? This is just such an exclusive graphic mode, including scaling in 4K, stable 60 FPS, and improved ray tracing. The game gets a PS5 Pro enhanced flag if it meets these requirements. Other sources already state requirements for obtaining this flag, with a variable and fixed number of frames and resolutions. What developers who were given dev kits have already been working on since last fall. That is, we will see new games with better graphics and new sensations on PS5 Pro. Under such parameters, it will be possible to catch up with old games. The main thing is that for such an improvement, you did not have to pay as much as for the next-gen version of old games at the time of the release of PS5 FAT. However, to evaluate objectively whether changing the usual PS5 to PS5 Pro is worth it, we will most likely be able to go somewhere by Christmas. And here comes the time to talk about the design. However, with a bit of wear and tear because, recalling the pre-release plumage of the usual PS5, everyone just showed renders of a special dev kit for developers, which now, if anything, can even be found on eBay in your collection. Therefore, what we see on the pre-renders may also be a dev kit. However, given that we already know what Fat and Slim look like, it is not difficult to assume what Pro will look like. And as it seems, fan renders are not far from the truth. Most likely, this will again be a towering design and size comparable to Fat because its dimensions, as the company itself showed, were unjustifiably blown up due to a hurry in the release, which allowed to release Slim, in fact, without even changing the hardware. But for Pro, such a design with a large radiator will be just right. Perhaps they will add more LEDs and different backlighting and change the design of the side panels, for example, to purely black. But they are with us until the end of the generation is clear. The price increase is because any Pro version, even in previous generations, was more expensive than the original. However, Slim was cheaper, which did not prevent the developers of this generation from raising prices for it. So if the price increase for Pro was about $100 earlier, then there are probably rumors that the increase in price for PS5 Pro for $200 is not so groundless. I don't know, of course, what such a console costs for $700 if it is quite possible to collect a PC for the same budget. So I hope for at least $600. But this is far from all the disadvantages because we still have not figured out the memory. Since there are 16 gigabytes, about 2 are immediately reserved for the system's operation. So we get only 14 at the output, which was not enough 3 years ago when the consoles were released. It should be borne in mind that the remaining amount of memory is divided between the processor and the video card. This is a big problem, considering the weight of high-resolution textures, which can become a bottleneck for subsequent releases. On the other hand, adding memory would allow the developers to port games only to Pro, filling in the fat with Slim. It was about the same as it was with Baldur's Gate 3 on the Xbox Series S, which together with Mike's engineers, had to be ported by the developer. It is clear that on PS5 Fat and Slim, the developers would not have forgotten. It's just that there could be difficulties with porting, which would delay the release. And so everything will come out right away, so it's not clear here. However, much more concern is caused by PSSR technology. After all, with it, the joke about emulation on consoles can gain relevance again. After all, instead of adequately porting and optimizing games, you can smooth everything through upscale, and it will work. Therefore, it is logical to ask why you need such an upgrade if the main emphasis is on the image's resolution. And here are two options at once. For those hardcore gamers chasing the number of frames and high resolution, this will allow what is called the trend, passing new games on ultras. The fact that this can be done on a PC is also relevant. But you need to collect the PC and play with the settings, and here, as it were, you just launched and played. Well, for Sony itself, this is an opportunity to roll over new technologies before the next generation's release, in which neural networks will already be essential. It seems that the new PlayStation 5 Pro is such a transitional stage to next generation, where some new ideas and technologies are being tried out, and even overpaid for. As a result, the prediction made at the beginning of the generation that consoles are now starting to look like PCs with hardware that needs to be changed from generation to play the same games is coming true. PS5 Pro is the next generation that will bring new features. If you haven't upgraded your PS4 or PS4 Pro yet, this is a great reason to do so, but I don't think it makes sense to change the fat from PS5 to Pro just yet. Either way, there will be issues with purchases and pricing at launch, but eventually the prices will come down and we'll see some real gameplay. That's when we can decide if it's worth buying. Of course, when the console comes out, I'll do a review on it, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and give it a like to support this video. After all, that's where we'll end up. Please write what you think about it. It will be interesting to read your opinion whether you will buy it or not. And thanks for watching.